I never thought the past could bleed into the present so sharply. Family histories, at least in my imagination, were dusty things. Names scribbled in fading ink, yellowed photographs tucked into brittle albums, vague anecdotes passed down by relatives who either couldn't remember properly or didn't care to. For years, I avoided asking questions. My family, especially on my father's side, always carried a shadow around them, a kind of heaviness that no one could explain but everyone felt. I thought it was just poverty, broken marriages, or the way silence became a tradition of its own. Then, in 2022, I began piecing together a family tree. At first, it was innocent, just a way to feel connected to people I never knew. But what I found buried in those records didn't just shock me, it haunted me. I discovered that an infant in my family didn't die of natural causes, as everyone believed. She was murdered, and the story of who did it and why was tangled in lies, misremembered truths, and secrets that stretched across generations. This is not just a story about genealogy. It's a story about madness, memory, and the unbearable weight of knowing. It started with boredom. I was sitting at my desk one night, the hum of my computer filling the room, my wife asleep in the next room. Work had been relentless, the kind of stress that made me crave distraction. I typed my last name into a genealogy website. Just for fun, I told myself. Within minutes, I was hooked. Seeing records of people who shared my bloodline birth certificates, census forms, marriage licenses, felt strangely intimate, as if I were peering into a window that had been locked for decades and suddenly cracked open. My father's side was messy. I knew that. He was his mother's only child, but his father had children from another relationship. My grandparents married in 1960, separated in 1964, divorced by 1970. It was the kind of fractured timeline I'd grown used to. But in the midst of dates and documents, one name caught me off guard. A baby girl, born in 1962. My aunt, a sister my father never spoke of. I vaguely recalled my grandmother mentioning a child who died young, but it was always brushed aside. Crib death, she had said once. Or maybe it was hydrocephaly. Stories shifted depending on who told them. At first, I shrugged it off. Infant death wasn't rare back then. But something in me stirred. I wanted to know more. So I searched the newspaper archives. I expected a short obituary, maybe a few lines tucked in the classifieds. Instead, I found something else. Something I can never unsee. The headline was blunt. Infant suffocated while sleeping. Family in mourning. My stomach dropped as I read. The article didn't say crib death. It didn't mention illness or accident. It stated clearly that the baby had been suffocated with a plastic bag. And the most shocking detail, according to the piece, the child's 4-year-old sibling had done it. I froze. My father was 4 at the time. But the article referred to the sibling as a girl, a sister, which didn't make sense. My father was his mother's only child, unless the newspaper got it wrong, or unless one of my grandmother's younger sisters who lived with her back then had been the one. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen, my pulse thudding in my ears. This wasn't a family tragedy buried under time. This was a crime, a murder. And it had been woven into our story as something else entirely. For days, I couldn't think about anything else. At work, in the car, even as I tried to fall asleep at night, the image of that article burned behind my eyes. Why hadn't anyone ever told me? Why did my father still believe his sister died of SIDS? I thought back to family gatherings. My grandmother always seemed to carry a particular bitterness toward her youngest sister. Their relationship was strained, even hostile at times. Could it be because of this? Could her sister have been the one who suffocated the baby? The thought made me nauseous. I knew most of the people who could clarify the truth were already gone. My grandparents both buried years ago, the ones who carried the secret to their graves. A few of their cousins still lived, but they were in their 80s. Could I even ask them? Wouldn't that be cruel? To dig up pain they had buried for 60 years? And then came the bigger question, the one that twisted my stomach every time it surfaced. Should I tell my father? If I did, I could destroy his relationship with the woman he calls sister, his aunt, who helped raise him, who has always been a second mother. If I stayed silent, I would carry the weight of the truth alone. Either way, the silence was suffocating. I didn't tell anyone at first. The article sat printed on my desk, folded in half, tucked beneath a stack of bills. But it was all I could think about. At night, when my wife asked why I was so quiet, I shrugged and said, "Work stuff." I couldn't even explain it to her yet. To put it into words would make it real. But inside, my mind kept circling back. Suffocated. A plastic bag. A 4-year-old sibling. I opened my laptop again, reread the article a dozen times, trying to see if I missed something. Maybe it was a mistake in reporting? Newspapers got things wrong all the time. Maybe it wasn't even my family. But the dates matched. The names. The address. There was no mistake. One night, I poured myself a drink and sat alone, staring at a photo of my father as a boy. Could he have done it? Could he have killed his own baby sister? The thought made my skin crawl. But the alternative, that one of my grandmother's sisters had done it, wasn't much better. Either way, someone close to me had blood on their hands, even if it was the clumsy, confused blood of childhood. I began noticing things I hadn't before. When I called my dad, he always referred to his sister's death as crib death. He said it casually, as though it had been a random tragedy. "I don't remember much. I was too young," he once told me. "I just remember my mom crying a lot." But when I pressed gently asking what his aunties were like back then, he grew quiet. "We don't need to dig that up," he said. "It was a long time ago. A long time ago." Yes, but the silence felt intentional, like he was protecting someone, or protecting himself. I started imagining conversations with people who were long gone. My grandmother, sitting across from me in her kitchen, shaking her head. My grandfather, his lips pressed into a hard line. The infant, nameless, voiceless, crying from a crib that no one saved her from. And the strangest thing, I began dreaming about plastic bags. Waking up in the middle of the night, sweaty, tangled in sheets, convinced I couldn't breathe. I couldn't resist anymore. I called my father's aunt, my grandmother's youngest sister, the one who was 4 when the baby died. She's in her late 60s now, her voice scratchy with age. At first, the conversation was normal. We talked about the weather, about how young people these days don't know real struggle. Then slowly, I steered toward the past. "Do you remember much about when you were little?" I asked. She chuckled. "Not really, just bits and pieces. Your grandma was always bossing me around, though. She treated me like I was in the way." I swallowed hard. "Do you remember when the baby died?" Silence. Long enough that I thought the line had disconnected. Then she said, "That's not something we need to talk about." Her tone was sharp, final. "But listen to me," she cut in. "Some things are better left alone. Do you understand? Don't go asking questions you don't want answers to." And with that, she hung up. I sat staring at my phone, my heart pounding. Her reaction said everything. My obsession wasn't invisible. My wife finally cornered me one evening after dinner. "You've been distant," she said, placing a hand over mine. "Is it work? Or is it me?" I looked at her, torn between keeping the secret and sharing the burden. So I told her, not everything, just the bare bones, that I'd discovered something disturbing in my family history, that it might involve a death, that I wasn't sure who was responsible. Her eyes widened. "Are you saying someone in your family killed a baby?" I winced. Hearing it out loud was worse than thinking it. "I don't know. That's the problem. I just don't know." She leaned back, processing. "And you think your dad doesn't know the truth?" "I think he knows the story he was told, and I think that story is a lie." For the first time since this all began, I saw fear in her eyes. Not fear of me, but of what I was uncovering. "Maybe," she said softly. "It's better not to dig too deep." But by then, I was in too far. The more I thought about it, the more impossible it seemed to stay silent. Didn't my father deserve the truth, even if it shattered him? Didn't I deserve to know the story of where I came from? But every time I imagined sitting across from him, telling him that his baby sister hadn't died of SIDS but of suffocation, I felt sick. How could I destroy his world like that? And yet, wasn't it already destroyed? Wasn't it worse to let him keep living with a lie? At night, I'd sit at my desk staring at the folded newspaper article, the weight of it crushing me. The baby's name, the date, the words, suffocated with a plastic bag. I was trapped between two futures, one where I carried this secret alone, and one where I risked unraveling my family forever. Either way, the silence was breaking me.